So last week, uh, continuing our study reflections on inner transformation, self-awareness, inner transformation, and we always repeat that it's based on the Sermon on the Mount, on the um, verses we have there, together with the 13 virtues proposed by Benjamin Franklin for us to become good people. We started talking about blessed are those who mourn and that they would be comforted. And we talked about acceptance in the several religions and several kind of philosophies. We talked about some examples like, the judo that you should not necessarily resist, but bend with that, the same thing as the oak tree and the reeds. And today, to continue, we are going to be on still on this topic in terms of acceptance in the adversity. So in this point, we always have to remember that we are still living in a world that is going through a transition, right? We know that we are in a world of trials and atonements, going through a world of regeneration, but it is a process, and it doesn't mean necessarily that as soon as we stepped on the a regenerative world, everything, all the problems, all the challenges are going to disappear. They should be reduced more and more, but it is a transition. It's the same thing as we have 1 minute after midnight. It's a new day, but it is still dark. There are still a few hours that is going to be looking dark. We cannot say, oh, it's a new day, it's a new dawn, right? Not really, because this is the whole process. So the good point about it is for us to reflect that everything evolves and progresses. The world, even nature itself, is improving, and suffering will one day no longer be part of our planet. Why? Because the planet is going to be more beautiful. We will suffer less from, things that we have today, volcanoes, hurricanes, or etc. Or because we are the ones that are going to be going through a process of growing and changing our attitude. At this point, we all know that it depends on us in each and everything. It's never up to the world the results of what is happening in our lives. We are the ones that are making our lives harder or not. And again, Earth is passing through a period of transformation, world of tests and autonomous to a world of regeneration, where goodness is going to prevail. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, which is good enough for us to know, so we can look forward to get there, and we can apply ourselves to get there faster, because we are talking again about something that has to do with how we feel innerly ourselves. It's not just about the outside. Is reaching understanding, is marching in this direction, is accepting the need for transformation, is contributing with all of those that are going through this path, because sometimes we can be very negative. Like, how many times we go to people that say, oh, um, I'm going to start doing something good, whatever this is, and we will say, oh, okay, I heard this before, like, saying, in a very no nice way, doubtful way, not giving any kind of motivation for others to move forward. we never know. This can be the time. Maybe the person tried 10, 20, 50 times. Maybe 51 is the one that is going to work okay, especially if we cheer this person up. In the meantime, what we have to understand is that yes, there are still so much suffering in this world, and it's not a privilege. It doesn't affect only those of a certain social stand, uh, pretty or not, rich or not, intellectual or not, that live in one country or another. It's everywhere. All of us go through suffering. And sometimes, and one thing that I always like to point out is that we should never judge the amount of suffering and how other people react in relation to the adversities they are facing. Because some of us may be or have more strength to cope with certain situations, and other people don't. So we can never judge and diminish the pain that people are suffering because of their problems. Even when we look at their problems, we say, but this compared to mine is nothing. Well, like we have this saying in Brazil, pepper in the eyes of others doesn't hurt my eyes, right? That is sting my eyes. So we will uh, per se always have this kind of reaction, but let us be compassionate and understand that there are more there are people that have more spiritual, emotional structure to deal with certain problems than other, regardless of age, because it's not necessarily just youngsters that can still, are in need of mature, but we may find even in adults, old adults, that also will have the same thing. So, um, and this is why we talk about this kind of acceptance in the way like we were talking last week. It doesn't mean that we are embracing, it doesn't mean that I'm saying, oh, it's my karma and let this happen because I want to get rid of that as soon as possible. Because from the perspective of our spiritual knowledge, we do not if we are talking about making amends, about learning lessons, we do not need to go through that, to do that through pain. It can be through love, dedication, work for goodness, being altruistic, all those things that will lead to the same result that not necessarily means pain. So this is the understanding that we have to know. And the more we grow in this understanding that we are all connected, that we are all brothers and sisters, even if, but I don't know that those people that live on the other side of the world. Okay, we don't know them, but it doesn't mean that they are not souls, spirits like ourselves, that they are also children of God, and that somehow along the way our lives is going to be connected, and we will feel their pain, we will feel their suffering. We can no longer ignore that. Ignoring that means that we are in the infancy of our spiritual process, when we are much more like egocentrics, right, self-centered, than necessarily worrying about what is going on in the world. So those who aspire to a pure life and a better world perceive through intuition that this world is not the end of everything. They know where they will go. They understand the reason for their afflictions and the cause of their sufferings. Beyond the shadows and sorrows of the earth, they perceive the dawn of a new life. And in order that we may weigh the blessings and suffering of this life, in order that we may distinguish what is truly happiness and unhappiness, we must rise above the narrow circle of earthly experiences. Because again, as we always say, there is also this point of, examining our perspective. If my perspective is only to analyze the occurrences of life through, a material way, um, I will just see things as from this materialistic perception, you know. But if we have a spiritual perspective, it's going to add something that will wind up contributing to us having a better knowledge, a better understanding of life. And so this is important for us to realize and to take into consideration, right? And now I'm going to stop and leave room for you to make your comments and questions. Like I said, it's not a topic that it's easy for us to deal with, but it's very important because it's part of all our lives. So anyone would like to? Yeah, okay, Sonia, go ahead.
I understand this process to be a spirit. It's the long way when we say you come with pain or love. I totally understand why the more people come with pain and suffering, because as you mentioned, we are materialists, and then we start to understand more when touch our material life, because it's not easy to understand and believe for invisible life. Then after we go through some suffering, and then we find a group of ours and we start receiving this light of Jesus, all these lessons in our life and applying and start this process of transformation, we start to understand a little bit more and start to believe about this spiritual life.
You see, it's always a process of personal spiritual growth. uh, I use it as example so many times. If you come to a child, it says, I give you one chocolate today or 10 tomorrow. Even if it's tomorrow or in a couple of hours, the child probably will say, no, I prefer one now. Give it to me now. So that's how we still, in average, react to things. And when uh, we are going through a path that we know that may bring us um, some suffering along the way, we always have that idea, like when we mention, COVID started. Ah, okay, I don't have to take care of myself. This is never gonna catch me, right? Or like, bad things happen only to others. Or like we see our youth saying, oh no, that, yeah, when you say, oh, this is a dangerous thing. No, it's never gonna happen to me. We always have this superhero idea of ourselves, right? That we are immune to things until we see that we're not. The thing is, Sonia, that is really frustrating in ourselves, because let's not even talk about others, is that we keep on doing the same things, waiting for different results. Oh no, if I do this time, it's going to it's not going to bring that kind of reaction. It does, because it's the same thing. And it's hard, for the old habits die hard. it's hard for us to change. It is hard for us to be, the one, the change maker as well, even because the world doesn't accept or applaud or even understand change makers. You see, like I said, over 30 years ago, when I decided to become a vegetarian, I was an alien, in the eyes of everyone. Now we're coming to a time that you're an alien if you still eat meat, right? I mean, but I remember how hard and how much mockery I had to face, even from my family. Sometimes my father would look at my meal and say, not even our dog would eat what you're eating. I said, yes, because it's not dog food, it's humans' good food, right? Anyway, so it is so hard, this process. We still kind of say, well, this is a pain that I'm using. So unless it becomes unbearable, I don't want it to change a new formula. And many times as well due to ignorance, Sonia, because we don't think that there are other ways. Or when we know that there are other ways, like we know right now, they're hard, they're painful. There is a lot of solitude, and and that's why it becomes so hard for us to make different choices. But we are making different choices already, and little by little we will move in this direction. And again, um, each one of us will decide when the pain is enough and I have to try something different. Any more comment or question? Zoraida? No, no.
No, I was thinking of how much we continue to study of the world of regeneration and all that we have to go through. But it's just like you explaining, and Sonia said, until we learn to understand that instead of going through, like we always say, that we go through pain instead of love. And so until we learn this, I guess we will continue to go through our trials and tribulations until the time comes that you realize that the pain, I'm tired of pain. There's so many other ways to face life. But we have to get to that point, Jussara, right? If they don't learn, they don't study, they don't understand, it'll take a longer time for us to go down that road. So it's like you said, it's so hard, it's so difficult. We look at the world now, we see so much change of suffering. There's so much, I don't know if it's me. I see that, I see the world is turning upside down. But I understand that Spiritism teaches us this, that until we learn to accept adversity and understand why we need it to get better, and we don't need to have it. We choose to make choices that are not right for us. And again, it's so hard and it's so difficult. It's going to take uh, not anytime soon,
It
right?
took to us, right? Yeah. And the thing, Soraya, also is that sometimes we think like we are in a crossroad, okay, and we choose the path, oh, pain or love. It's not exactly that. We are in there is just one road. The thing is, when I start making this road looking different, and And again, it's not like, okay, I'm going to use my afternoons now to work in a, in an orphanage, because then I'm giving, I'm paying with love. No, this is not a trade-off. It's something that will come from the heart, because the pain, adversities, they always have an educational purpose. And when I learn and I take the initiative from the heart of, of moving away of my old self, my old ways, and going in a direction of good things, good deeds. This is the process. It's not necessarily, okay, let me see, put in the balance which one I wanted to choose. It's the result of growing. And one thing that is characteristic of a period of transition is exactly what you mentioned, Soraya. The spirits have been for a while already warning us that in periods of transition, we will see a lot of pain and people that seem to be lost, because they are coming back in a reincarnation to decide for themselves whether they are ready or not to become citizens of a better world.
Yeah.
Not a perfect,
No,
not
perfect.
a happy, just a
No.
better world. Because otherwise, they would be jeopardizing the life of others and not feeling happy themselves, because there will be no place for them to give way to their many whims and inclinations.
Yeah.
So that's why everyone that is still has a chance
Mm.
to, meaning having a chance, is we are talking about goodwill. We are not talking about overnight transformation. And I just live today, tomorrow, wow, I'm a shining Jussara. Right now, it's just okay. I'm willing to do the work. And here, remember, it's not about words, it's about really what is going on, and they know that. So that's why we look around and we said, my God, how come the world is progressing if we see all that?
Yeah.
It's because the justice of God, the mercy, the love give us still said, last warning, or last minutes to depart for a new better world. uh, are you going to grab your suitcase and go, or not, your luggage or not, right?
Mm.
And so that is why we still seeing, uh, and there are so many adverse forces into play as well that do not want us to move, in a better direction. And so that's why it's so hard. So let's see the next one here. Accepting the diversity. We know from the
Can I just ask
Sure,
a question there?
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I came in late, so I haven't caught the beginning part of this. I've just arrived back home in Mauritius this moment. So, but what I wanted to ask is there, when one talks about the adversity or the potential for change, is there actually a sort of like a purpose for which one actually is intended in this life? Is there any kind of like, should one, is there any should of you ought to do or become or contribute in XYZ way, or is it actually just that you are choosing within this life according to the adversity and the opportunities that come to you in any one moment? Or is there sort of a soul, okay, that's the expectation of you? in this life?
Yes, great question, Sally. And actually, at the beginning, we're just to introduce it, the topic that it's basically the continuation of the same one we saw last week. And yeah, we have in the Spirits book, part 2, when it talks about the life of spirits, and I think we have like 12 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, on the second part. And when it talks about reincarnation and the aim of incarnation, and what the Spirit says in terms of the aim of reincarnation, the aim of our incarnation for each and every one of us is to progress.
Yes.
And then like, your question, why is there a formula for this progress?
Mm,
Is there any kind of
mm,
indication, a
mm.
roadmap for us to be able to more in a more secure way to go through that? There isn't. What we have is what we've been having from, at least more than 4,000 years, when we already started, with the Old Testament, all the spirits that have been incarnating and giving us a way, or showing us a different way, including Jesus, in terms of I'm not asking you to follow the man, but to follow my examples that comes from the teachings. At this stage that we are talking about something very personal and even selfish. We should be just taking care of ourselves, looking after ourselves. Of course, others are going to be involved, especially our immediate family that, react so closely with us. Uh, but the point here that if we look in time about, if we think about Fori, uh, Buddha, and Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, and Jesus, and St. Francis, and so many from other different philosophies, and also philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras. They all were always leading us in the path to learn about our spiritual nature. The thing that is actually we are still struggling with is with matter. When we come to matter, we become too attached to it, and many of us come to even coming from the spirit world, come here and said, no, there is no spirit world. I'm not going to return to a spirit world. This is it. This is what it is. And then we just live taking into consideration the values of material life. And the values of material life for someone that is growing, spiritually speaking, is becoming each time less nourishing. So is there any formula? No. Is there just an invitation to become conscious that we are more than we are seeing, and that what is surrounding us?
Okay.
And when we move in this direction, now I say, okay, there is a new perspective, and it's when we are going to start doing this change. In terms of behavior, it should be second nature. I know that if I'm rude with someone, I can expect the person to react in the same way. So life has been teaching me already some very important notions of moral, ethical behavior. But it's still, even when we are talking just about the material values, we resist. Life invites us not to be selfish. Every time I, open the water in my sink and let it run without any kind of consideration. We know that everyone is screaming in the world. Be careful, be mindful about, not to waste water. Water is a precious commodity. Be careful with, the destruction of trees. Oh no, but I mean, I wanna do a house here. I wanna put a factory here. I wanna go make a road here. I couldn't care less about results that I will see 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now. So we know so many things that if pertains to this life, to this reality of material reality that could make our life so much easier and happier, and we still don't know, what can we say when we are talking about spiritual values? So we have so many
Mhm.
indications for every taste in every philosophy and religion. We just have to start from this point.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no, you're welcome. Anyone else? Okay. So we have this example of Job, right, in the Bible, that he was tested by God. So when Job, because they wanted to test him to see if he was really faithful, and so everything in the Job's world was falling apart around him. All his friends and families started blaming him because adversity, suffering only comes to those who deserve or did something wrong. That was the belief at that time, which is not entirely wrong, right? In a way, our actions are boomerangs that are going to come back to us, be them good or bad, right? So, but in this case, in this particular case, Job was very good, very nice, very faithful to God, but he was tested to give an example. And even his wife told him to give up, saying, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not accept our diversity?" So we see the understanding that he had in terms of the facts of life, understanding that adversity not necessarily means that we are being punished. Some of them are part of, the condition of the world that we live, and some of them are the result of what we are doing, but with a name of, making us change our ways. I think last week we mentioned about, having a timeout. A timeout is hard, it's an adversity. I wanted to be free to be doing things, but now I'm invited through this kind of adversity to think about things, to reflect, and to decide whether I want or not to go to the same path. And there is this story, the creativity in a diversity. It doesn't mean that because we are in a diversity, there is not a way out for us to minimize the things, to minimize the pains. Homer wrote, "Adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which in prosperous circumstances would have lain dormant," which is sometimes adversity is like, that little push for us to move forward. Because if I'm too comfortable where I am, everything's okay, life is fine, okay. I'm never going to to risk do something else that would bring me much happiness. Better not to risk, or I'm too comfortable to change like this. So there's a story about a chicken farmer whose land kept flooding and killing his chickens. In despair, he told his wife, I've had it. I can't afford to buy another place and I can't sell this one. What can I do? And she calmly replied, buy ducks. So that's what we have to do. Find a solution. Okay, this is what, this is what life is throwing me. How can I make it not to be that so much an aggravation? Or what can I learn from that? Because there is always a lesson, like I said, it's never with a purpose of punishing or punishment. It's always for us to learn something. So adversity working in our favor. The adversities we face in life are not only the result of our past misdemeanors, they also represent challenges that can help us raise ourselves from one level to the next. The difficulties we have to overcome stimulate and develop our intelligence. The unwise individuals struggle against the immutable laws of nature, but the judicious one discovers in one's trials a means of self improvement and of strengthening one's faculties. He or she accepts the evils of fate and rises superior to them and makes them a stepping stone to virtue. We have an example here. In 1832, French engineer Ferdinand Marie de Lesseps was traveling on the Mediterranean Sea. One of the passengers on the ship came down with a contagious disease and the ship was quarantined. Lesseps became very frustrated. To help kill time, he read the memoirs of Jacques-Marie Lepere, who had considered the feasibility of building a canal from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. And that's how the Suez Channel came to place. In 1869, the Suez was completed. It was built following Lesseps' design and under his leadership. It was during that quarantine 37 years earlier that he plans for the Suez and the canal was germinated and was conceived by him. The entire world has reaped the benefits ever since. So sometimes, because we only look at, in the short term, right, and what is immediately around, we don't see the benefits that a timeout like he had. Okay, I have to find something to entertain myself in this current quarantine. He started reading a book, got some ideas, he started thinking. So was it providential or not? If you would come to him and could come to him and ask him, would you go to this quarantine again after everything happened? What do you think is going to be his answer? Oh, I would go to 4 or 5 of them. If that would be the result, my name being in history for the times to come, and all the benefits and all of that happened because of this, of course, that was a very small price to pay. And this many times is what happened to us. I know it did already. I know we can look back to our own lives and say, okay, it was thanks to that pain that I start looking for, spiritual values. Maybe if it was not that pain, we would still be in our so comfortable, not fulfilling lives and completely unaware of any kind of spiritual values and things that would give us more this joy and even strength to deal with everything that is hard that is coming our way, right? Comments, questions? Nothing. Okay, I'll go another one then. 13 virtues. Like we said, we always, in this process of self-awareness and inner transformation, we are also using as basis the 13 virtues of Benjamin Franklin. And the one that is related to this particular um, verse of the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, is tranquility. Is the what we're talking about in terms of acceptance. So the wise advice of Benjamin Franklin as a way of attaining inner transformation can be a very important tool in our lives when we face adversities. We should remain tranquil and not be disturbed by occurrences that are common or unavoidable. So this is another thing for us to think about, right? Many of the things that disturb our way of living and bring us pain are things that we have no control. Okay, it's not that I'm just going to cross my arm and do nothing, or not being affected by those things. We can all, like, now in times of war, we can donate to countries for food, for shelter, for whatever they need in those trying times. We can send prayers, we can you know write articles, we can do something even at distance, remembering that our brothers and sisters are going through so much struggle in this moment. But not necessarily when we give ourselves to a situation of despair, we never are able to see a way out or even to contribute. So that's why tranquility, in this sense, is what he says in terms of what is good for us to practice uh, every even because sometimes we talk about it when bad things happen to us and we get into too much state of despair. It makes even harder for the spirits to reach us and to help us. Or sometimes they are there and we are completely oblivious to their presence because we immerse ourselves in so much sorrow, self-pity, and darkness, that it makes harder for them to reach us and for us to feel their presence, and to, with that, to have more hope and patience, and even to pray for them to give us the strength to go through this rough patch, right? So that's why trying to maintaining calmness, especially like he says here, when occurrences are common or unavoidable, it's the wise way to do. Okay. Any comments or questions? We are going to continue next week because the other one is going to require a little bit more of our time to uh, to discuss and to meditate. And next week we are going to be uh, finishing this topic. So I will stop the sharing now. So if you still have anything that you would like to say or contribute. Yes, Sonia?
I know it's not easy to be calm when you start to face any adversity. The first step is, what can I do? And then after this, you can realize, okay, it's anything I can do to solve this situation. And then we can start to be more calm, more calm. But I believe it's always the second step. It's because the first one, we always believe, because we are selfish, we always believe we can solve the situation and need to do something. And then, but again, it's a process of learning.
It's part of the law of preservation that we study as well in the Spirit's book, right? I mean, we will always have this reaction of self-preservation, and self-preservation in relation to pain, which is good as well. That's why when we are talking about acceptance here, we are not saying again, oh, bring me suffering because it's the will of God and it's going to make me grow faster. No, it's not. It's not about that, because the growing is more about how we deal with that in a mature way, like very much when we see in our lives. Okay, if a teenager goes through a breakup, it's hard. It's very hard. If an adult goes through a breakup, it is hard, but it's not as much, because we already know how to deal with that. If it's later in life, the same thing, right? So we become more experienced with things, and savvy as well, right? So although, like we said, it's not something that we want to embrace, it's not what I want in our way, and it's the question that Sally asked it: what can I do to read this from my life? And this is what we are doing. It's a learning about real values, that it starts with us. It starts with our inner transformation. It starts with us moving away from our old pattern self, and start developing new things. Like, for instance, how much jealousy can bring us unhappiness. But we still may feel jealous if we see that someone got something that it was the object of your desire as well. And then you know. So now I'm invited to start reflecting about, the pettiness that I've been putting myself into, and letting things like that affect me in a way that makes me feel become even bitter, frustrated with life. It can, it's like opening a can of worms, right? It may seem very simple things, but in the day-to-day lives, our day-to-day lives, analyzing and paying attention to us and to our behaviors, to our emotions, we can prevent a lot of suffering, and getting ourselves involved in gossiping and malice, and in this kind of things, of being envious of and again, the wise people from the past already told us in many different again concepts of life. Do not wish, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? Is it? Would you really like to change? And then you go there, and you find out that it was greener, but it was turf, and you have to start from the beginning. It was not even grass, real grass, right? And yours, well, okay, it was not that nice, but it at least was the real thing, right? So that's the steps, right? And that's the basic things for us to and even when the inevitable comes, we say, okay, one thing I know for sure. Goodness doesn't last forever, but bad also doesn't last forever. This too shall pass, right? Okay. Any more things, or should we go to?